what the fuck? No shot. Oh my! This game is so cooked. There's got to be something better I can play. What the fuck? This game is more cooked than the last one. That is literally a professional player. I don't know, man. I think hero shooters might just be cooked. I guess I'll go back to playing my little animal fishing games. Hold on. There's another Marvel game. Wait. Hold up. Wait, this is so anime. Hold on. They might be cooking. They might be cooking. Oh my god. Wait. Hold on. This shit is fire. This shit is fire! This game looks fucking sick! Oh my god, he's shredding! Okay, yeah, that might have been the coolest trailer I've ever seen. Get me in now. Okay, wait, who do we got? Hold up, she kinda bad though.
Step aside. You're mine.
Unless you've been taking a vacation with the Amish community for the last couple of weeks, I'm sure you've all heard of the newest hero shooter on the block, Marvel Rivals. I know most of you rolled your eyes hearing the godforsaken phrase hero shooter, but what if I told you this one might actually be good? Yeah, believe it or not, the franchise worth over $50 billion is still actually capable of releasing something good every once in a while. After the disastrous game I'm sure we all played, Marvel's Avengers, I don't think Rivals was immediately on everyone's radar when it was announced. But after seeing the visual charm the game has and some fan-favorite Marvel characters finally making an appearance in a big-budget game, many of us were sold on the idea. I know better than to get my hopes up for any game released in today's market, so I kept an eye on Rivals with optimism, but also made sure to keep that optimism in check just so I wouldn't be disappointed in the long run. And let me tell you, Rivals did not disappoint. The game has a pretty massive starting cast of 33 unique playable characters and a fantastic stylized art style. It also has the fated return of 6v6 in a hero shooter and surprisingly reasonable monetization. You've probably played the game by now considering it's free, but what exactly makes Rivals stand out in such an oversaturated genre of games? Well, to all my billion-dollar companies watching, take some notes because today I'm going to tell you how to do a hero shooter correctly. Before we get too deep into this, I want to just take 10 seconds just to let y'all know that GamerSupps is starting their holiday sale on December 20th. You get free gifts with every tub. They have multiple tiers, with tier 1 being a free shaker cup. So if you're interested in some great energy drinks, and they do caffeine free as well if you're just looking for good flavor, make sure to use my code Devskoi for 10% off and it would really help out the channel. Now let's get back to it. Many would argue that the first and most important part of making a good hero shooter is the playable heroes. Compared to some of the other big hitters in the genre, Rivals released with an impressive 33 characters. And then we have Apex Legends, which released with a measly 8 characters. Concord, if you still remember what that game is, had 16. And the giant of the genre, Overwatch, had 21 characters on launch. What makes 33 characters on release day even more impressive is just how in-depth basically everybody's kit is. Of course, we have to have the generic Call of Duty guy, which seems to be the staple of most hero shooters, but on the other hand, we have characters like Captain America who have a total of 8 active abilities. To put that in perspective, off the top of my head, the characters with the most active abilities in Overwatch have about 6, while in Rivals, basically all of the cast has at least 6 active abilities. Now, I know more abilities doesn't instantly mean a character is stronger or they're designed better, but it usually does mean they're more fun to play. More abilities typically come with a higher skill ceiling, which in turn adds more of a reason to play and get better. Not to mention, it adds to the already chaotic gameplay of most hero shooters. Now, all of that seems impressive, but then we take it a step further with the team-up abilities. If you have 2 characters on the same team who have some sort of relation to each other in Marvel lore or synergizing kits in some way, this typically unlocks a special team-up ability, which adds an extra active or passive to some of the characters on your team. And some of these team-ups are kind of broken, for lack of a better term. For example, you have a team-up between Rocket and Punisher or Bucky, where Rocket gives them a bottomless magazine for a period of time. The last thing about the characters in Rivals I found pretty interesting is how they managed to have such a large cast of characters without most of them being direct copies of heroes in other games. Sometimes when the new big hero shooter releases, it kind of feels like the same thing as all the other ones because half of the characters already exist in other games. I'd be lying if I said there weren't a few characters with questionable originality, but even for those heroes, it's really only one or two abilities that function similarly to each other, while the rest of the kit is entirely unique. Despite all the comparisons to Overwatch, I honestly found more similarities to the heroes in Paladins. Like, Loki is pretty similar to Ying, or Mantis has some pretty similar abilities to Corvus, which honestly for me is totally fine, and you can hate me for this take, but I think Paladins actually has much more fun and interesting characters than Overwatch does. Come for me if you want, but I stand on that. And I think those of you who've played Paladins know exactly what I'm talking about. Another nice thing about the characters in Rivals, though, is that I think the healers are actually pretty fun to play, unlike in another game that I've mentioned a few times now. To clarify, I'm not saying Paladins is better than Overwatch, I'm just saying the characters are more fun in my opinion. Jumping back to Rivals, though, I think its pretty massive starting cast of intricate characters is a big reason to its success so far, and why people seem to be pretty optimistic about its future. Not to mention how there's been like 5 or 6 more characters already data mined in the files, which we should be seeing pretty soon. I don't think it's controversial to say that nailing the heroes in your hero shooter is definitely a key factor to making your game good. To follow this, there's a few other aspects where Rivals excels that I feel other games have failed, and those are big contributors as to why I think this game has a place in mainstream gaming. Let me explain. Let me ask you a question. Which of these characters do you think is more pleasing to look at?
Mommy? Sorry.
Now let me ask you a follow-up question. What is the biggest difference between these characters? If your answer was one of them is a pretty woman and the other one feels like an AI-generated image where you can't make out a single thing in it, then you're correct. I'm gonna say something that most of these big game companies don't want to hear. When most people play video games, they play it as an escape from the real world. They want to play as an ideal version of themselves or a character they really enjoy and identify with. And I don't think it's a hot take to say nobody thinks this is an ideal version of themselves and nobody identifies with this. To clarify, I'm not trying to argue against diversity in video games or anything like that, or trying to say
These games are too woke.
but I don't think it's that hard to see what most players want in a game when it comes to the characters. For Marvel Rivals, I think they have a pretty good idea of what people want to see, and I don't think it's a coincidence that people enjoy these characters more than these characters. Most people I know around the same age as me play video games. It's much more socially acceptable to be a gamer now, no matter who you are. And with this shift in gamers, it seems like developers have this impression that they'll get in trouble if they make a character attractive. At least American developers seem to have this sentiment. And sure, it's not realistic for every single character to be the hottest person you've ever seen, but no one plays games because they're realistic. I'm just gonna say it. I like playing as jacked dudes and pretty women. And so far, every single person I've asked agrees with me. And when your game's cast of characters consists mostly of jacked dudes and pretty women, I think it's a good day for everyone. Not to mention Satan is actually cute in this game. Judging by the responses to the characters in Marvel Rivals I've seen on the internet, it seems like pretty much everyone agrees with me. People are already upset that data miners haven't pulled Squirrel Girl's model from the game for special purposes. Update, we have actually pulled the Squirrel Girl model from the game files. Hallelujah, everybody. My point is, character design is important, and when it comes to a game with tons of different playable heroes, it becomes even more important. And I think Rivals does an amazing job of improving upon already interesting characters. I've seen the argument that
Rivals is only popular because it's Marvel.
but take a look at the visual style of these games versus Rivals. And I think from the visuals alone, it's pretty obvious why Rivals is the most popular of the group. There's plenty of other reasons as well, but we're just going off of visuals here. Now, once again, I'm not trying to say,
Oh, I wish we could go back to the days where all the women in games were hot. Am I right, fellas? Go woke and go broke.
I'm just saying, no one wants this. I'm probably in enough trouble saying as much as I have about this topic, but I think you all know what I mean. Aside from all the characters and Rivals just being visually appealing, the art style of the game is amazing. You can really tell the artists and animators put everything they had into making all of these superheroes actually feel like superheroes. It's hard to say Rivals isn't going to be a huge competitor in mainstream gaming when they come out of the gate using highlight intros like this, while Overwatch is still releasing stuff like this.
Hi.
To follow up on my previous point of people not really wanting games to be realistic, stylized graphics like this play a major part in pulling in people's attention. It's sort of like YouTube thumbnails nowadays. With so much competition, it's hard to stand out, and Rivals has done a pretty amazing job so far. As the game gets bigger, I only see them doing more and more impressive things down the road. Which, speaking of characters looking good in games, that leads me to the next reason as to why I think Rivals knows how to do a hero shooter the right way. When it comes to free-to-play games, the first major problem developers face is how to monetize it. Well, for most free shooters in the past couple of years, they tend to take one of two routes. Either they just release pay-to-win items, or they release cosmetics. Sometimes both. The thing that's strange to me, though, is how most of these companies can expect us to pay $200 for a cool skin, when I'm out here paying $100 for $20 worth of groceries. And when it comes to Rivals, I think they did a pretty decent job on the monetization. I've seen some people glazing Rivals for having super consumer-friendly monetization, and while it's definitely better than most free-to-play games, I still think it's a bit pricey. As someone who has admittedly spent an embarrassing amount of money on cosmetics and games, I still never really got over paying $20 for a skin. And while I understand live service games need to make money to continue to exist, it's a hard pill to swallow thinking about how some of the best games I ever played cost less money than one cosmetic in these free games. The thing that's unique about Rivals is they have a one-to-one currency conversion where the free currency you earn can be exchanged for the same amount of paid currency, which I think is definitely a step in the right direction. But as of now, you aren't really going to be able to get that Psylocke skin you want so bad without dropping just a little bit of money. I'm interested to see how they go about this in the future, since most games seem to be cutting back more and more on how much free currency you can obtain just by playing. One thing I will say though is I find it kind of interesting how a lot of people are okay with Rivals charging $20 for a skin, but actively criticize games like Overwatch and Apex for doing the same thing. That's why I can't fully praise Rivals for their approach, though a one-to-one currency exchange is definitely a good thing to see. I'll also note that all of these skin bundles typically come with a pretty cool highlight intro alongside the skin and some little filler goodies like sprays and stuff. I know it's probably a bit weird to hear me criticizing the monetization in Rivals in a video talking about why it's a hero shooter done right, but this is more so a comment on the free-to-play game market as a whole, since the pricing of skins is pretty similar to pretty much any other free shooter at the moment. The praise I'll give to Rivals is players being able to use free currency to buy paid items. If you've done all the challenges released so far, you could definitely buy the battle pass without spending any real money, which would usually take months of saving in pretty much any other game. This show of good faith definitely makes me optimistic about the future of this game. Going back to the skins though, one thing I do like is how every single character has a premium tier skin on release. So everyone has the option to get a cool skin for their favorite character no matter who it is. Then on the other hand, we have Overwatch, where they tend to give skins to the same 5 characters every single update. And on top of that, you have heroes like Venture who have been out for over 8 months and are just now receiving their first skin, which also kind of sucks. I'm sorry, I'm a big Venture fan and I was a little disappointed by this skin. They were hyping this shit up like 2 seasons ago, so I'm sorry, I'm a little disappointed. But anyways, props to Rivals for at least giving all of their characters some love, so hopefully that's something that continues in the future. To wrap things up, I have some final thoughts I'm curious to get your opinion on when it comes to Rivals actually doing a hero shooter the right way, so let's talk about that really quick. As the game gets older, it typically changes with its players. Now, whether those changes are for the better or not is sometimes up for debate. One of the most controversial changes in the hero shooter world was Overwatch's decision to switch from 6v6 to 5v5. And considering the recent developments, it seems like most players prefer 6v6. And while Blizzard continues to tell their audience that they're wrong and we're right, Rivals released with a 6v6 format and no role queue. For me at least, it brought back a lot of memories of old Overwatch. After playing for over 15 hours in 3 days, I can confidently say that 6v6 is more fun than 5v5. But the role queue dilemma is still up for debate. It's a bit annoying when you're trying to win, but you end up with 5 DPS and 1 healer. Though there's 2 things about this I have some thoughts on. First of all, the game has significantly more damage characters than any other role, so it sort of makes sense that most people would want to play a damage character. I would like to see a better distribution of characters in the future, but as of now, I'm not really sure why everyone thought this wouldn't be the case, with over half of the cast being damage. That brings us to the role queue debate. Okay, Devskoi jumping in here because I actually disagree with what I had originally said at this part of the video. Since recording this, I've probably put about 50 more hours into ranked, and it kind of changed my entire opinion on this subject. Originally, my take was that I think role queue would be beneficial in comp, but we should leave it out of quick play. But the more I play the game, the more I realize this game definitely does not need role queue. Now, I'll admit it definitely does suck getting 5 duelists on a team in a comp game, but that's not going to happen every single time. From my time playing, I've noticed that the further you climb, the less of an issue this becomes. It does a really good job of getting people to learn multiple roles, which I think if you're going to be playing a lot of ranked is something that's really important. To be honest, the only people I've noticed that are complaining that this game doesn't have role queue are the people who just want to play DPS every single game. And that's fine, you can play DPS every single game. I enjoy playing damage as well, but you also have to realize you're not going to win every single game if you only play damage. If they do end up adding role queue someday, I still think that's fine. I just honestly prefer the flexibility of not being locked into a 2-2-2 comp. I think it's really interesting that it opens up some new team comps that people wouldn't normally play. I've had plenty of games where I load in with 3 or 4 DPS thinking it's over from the start just for us to end up winning. Or I've even had games with 3 tanks or 3 healers and we win just as easily. So yeah, after playing the game more, my new take is I wouldn't mind role queue, but the game definitely does not need it. Either way though, I don't really think leaving out role queue is the end of the world, since if you care that much about winning over having fun, just swap to whatever character your team needs so you can try and win. Otherwise, stop crying and take the L like a big boy, because at least you had fun, right? The last thing I think is pretty notable when discussing the basically flawless release of Rivals is the lack of server and performance issues. You'd think nearly 500,000 players on Steam alone would cause for some pretty bad instability issues or force us to wait in queue just to play the game, but I was pleasantly surprised by how good things felt. The only unfortunate issue I ever had was the game wouldn't open the first couple of times because unfortunately I have a 13th gen CPU, and the game runs on Unreal Engine. And if you guys didn't know, Intel CPUs and Unreal Engine don't really get along. Thankfully, it was pretty easy to troubleshoot, but that was more of a fault on Intel's end rather than Rivals. I just thought it was something important to mention. Marvel Rivals is definitely a breath of fresh air in the hero shooter scene. After the disastrous release of Concord, I think everyone assumed that was the nail on the coffin for the genre, but in fact, all it took was not releasing a dogshit game. The steady decline of Overwatch wasn't very reassuring either, but as Rivals has proved, that has more to do with the poor decisions made by Blizzard as opposed to an oversaturation of the genre. I think Rivals has a bright future ahead of it. I personally can't wait to hop right back into a game after I finish this video, and I hope you've all been having as much fun with it as I have. Assuming this game doesn't stumble over the same hurdles as the other big hero shooters, I think there's a lot of potential in this game, and I hope it serves as an inspiration to other studios to not only revitalize the genre, but release actually good, finished games. But hey, even if we just get more CEOs blaming players as to why their game sucks, at least we have Rivals to fall back on, hopefully for years to come. If you enjoyed this video, you should check out this other one, because the algorithm really loves that, and it would make me really happy. Love you, bye.